Hi, good evening, everybody. It's good to see a crowd. They're not advancing on the table, so that's quite encouraging. Not yet, exactly. So a welcome to all of you, obviously, and to members as well. So I'm going to go through some stuff around what you do, okay? In the event you smell smoke. Okay. Right, so action in the event of emergency. No practice alarms planned for this evening, but if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the town hall. You'll see several of us in front of you, okay? By going down the main staircase or the back staircase by the High Street, then to the car park behind the town hall on St Runwald Street. In the case of any disturbance which requires a cabinet to withdraw from this room, councillors should withdraw to the mayor's parlour using the doors behind me. Await further advice and rescue, I think, Jonathan. This meeting is being streamed live over the internet on the council's YouTube channel, will be available to listen to afterwards. Use of mobile phones and other devices, including cameras by visitors, is welcomed, but you're requested to use them discreetly to set them to silent and not to use voice or camera flash functions. Speakers are reminded that microphones are to be used at all times. Now let me introduce the work of the Cabinet. I'd like to explain that the Cabinet is the main executive body of the council. It's responsible for day-to-day decision-making on all council services and also makes recommendations to full council on major policy issues and on the council's budget. Cabinet is made up of 8 councillors, each of them is responsible for a particular range of services. Let me introduce myself and round the table, but I ought to note apologies from Councillor Luxford-Vaughan, Councillor Goss and Councillor Nissen. Right, so my name is Councillor David King, Leader of the Council.
Councillor Adam Fox, Deputy Leader of the Council and Portfolio Holder for the Local Economy and Council Transformation.
Good evening, Councillor Mark Corey, Portfolio Holder for Resources and Member for Wivenhoe.
Good evening, Councillor Julie Young, Member for Greensted, Cabinet Member for Housing and Communities.
Hello, Councillor Pam Cox, Portfolio Holder for Culture and Heritage, representing Newtown and Church Ward on the council.
Richard Clifford, Democratic Services Manager. Andrew Weavers, Monitoring Officer.
Pam Donnelly, Chief Executive.
Welcome to other members, senior members, officers of the team present. Okay, thank you very much. Item 2, urgent item.
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Item 3, declarations of interest. I invite Cabinet members to so declare. We are interested, it just means whether we've got a particular interest in a particular subject. Right, okay. Item 4, minutes of our last meeting. I invite Cabinet to approve the minutes of the meetings of 8th of March 23.
Great.
Thank you. Item 5, have your say. I have one noted, Sam Alder. Sam, please do come forward. I'm not sure if you've been in this place before. Well, we'll help you along, Sam. So you've got 3 minutes. You press that button and you can go, and
Thanks.
We'll respond and come back to you for a brief final word if needed.
Thanks very much, Councillor. So Sam Alder, I'm a regional organiser for Unison. We collectively bargain with the council itself, but we're here today because we also represent members who work for ID Verdi, which is a private organisation which you commission and provide a service which is for grounds maintenance and the services and landscape creation projects in Colchester, which you've commissioned out and I think extended that contract for some time. You may well remember that last year, and Pam will definitely remember because she was in part of this negotiation, that we negotiated pay for the council staff from April 2022, where the lowest paid member of staff was backdated to be paid £10.90 an hour. That was from April 2022. Unfortunately, the staff who provided grounds maintenance services and landscape creation projects in Colchester were paid about £2,000 a year less than those lowest paid full-time City Council employees who are directly employed by the council. So basically the question that we wanted to have say and ask around was, is the council able to consider a clause in the ID Verdi service to ensure that staff who are employed by ID Verdi, seen by the public as council workers, doing a really good job on sports maintenance, roundabout, the Castle Park, making sure that the city looks good. So the ID Verde for a service commissioned by the City Council can put in place all staff who are providing the City Council services are paid at least the same as the lowest paid directly employed City Council employee for April 22 and going forward, because we don't think that's right.
All right, Sam, what I'd like to do, I'll go to Councillor Corey to start, and between us, this is short notice with respect, and having seen an internal briefing note which goes to about 3 or 4 pages, I can, like many of us, paraphrase quite swiftly, but I want to be accurate and right on this. But let's give you the best answer we can now, and then between us, we'll talk about next steps. And Mark.
Thank you. I think the principle's simple in my mind, but how it works in practice is quite different. So when I was an even younger lad, we passed through the living wage about 6 years ago, and absolutely commit to that and ensure that all of our staff are paid that. And then it's our contractors who then have to commit to that as well. So that's clearly where this is broken down. And it's for us to sort of have a conversation with you and with ID Verde, I think, and go back on that. We committed after talks with Unison, as explained, to the backdating of the pay for our staff. And I think the other simple fact is we absolutely appreciate all the work that's done by the people behind you. You do the things that make our city shine. Lots of the areas that we see photographed by tourists, by people who live in the borough, and most of you live in this borough/city. So we commit in principle to that. We have done that for years. We've done that before the cost of living crisis caused by mismanagement of finance by this government and all the rest that are involved. So we will continue to try and practice that commitment. We have to work with our contractors. I have seen through the briefing note that about the 6-month clause that they have, that's what the living wage allows. But I think we should go back to ID Verde, and those are the kind of simple things I can say. As I say, it's more complicated when you actually have to go back and talk with contractors. And I'll leave the leader to add further to that. Thanks.
I suppose just to reiterate what Mark has said, we really value the work that staff working for ID Verde do. That as a council, we're committed to improving wage levels in the city. The council is clearly under a significant financial pressure, as Mark laid out, because of the economic calamity that we've seen, and through inflation on the council's budget as well. I think what the council's policy panel committed to some time ago was looking at bringing the ID Verde service back in-house, and that would then give us the opportunity to look at the wage levels too. But I think, as Mark said, it's about what's the quickest way that we can do to look at how we can improve wage levels across the service, whether that's working with ID Verde or over the longer period, thinking about how we might bring the service back in as well. Thank you, Leader.
Sam, I think the only thing I would add, and I know words don't pay bills, do they? But genuinely, respect should matter to all of us. It matters to us, and I'm sure it matters to you. So there's no question about that, how much we value you. This is a question of who you're, from my perspective, the bit I have to remind us is who you're employed by. You know, we are not your employer. What we do is have a real influence, the real living wage, on your employer. That we have a contractual obligation to. We oblige our suppliers to ensure that that wage is passed down through their workforce. So we can have a conversation. We promised to do that. But that's not clearly here and now. Our commitment's unchanged going forward. We are a good employer, and we encourage others to be a good employer. And as has been said, you know, the future may, we hope, see you back in a directly employed relationship. In the meantime, we have what we have. Your members are employed by ID Verde. It's not for us to intervene in that, but it is appropriate for us to have a conversation about how our understanding has been flowed through into contracts and into pay. You know, all that stuff that leads to your wage back at the end of the month. I'll stop there, Sam, if you want to come back briefly.
Yeah, well, I think I've got a minute to come back, so I will come back and use it. Thanks, councillors. Obviously, I understand what you're saying, but I think the council did overtake the living wage because the living wage only went up to £10.90 an hour on the 1st of October. Council chose to make an offer to the city council employees back to April to £10.90 an hour. So you went over and above that. Obviously, I get what you're saying. You paid a living wage, but then you also agreed to pay more than it to your lowest paid members of staff. So your lift pickers, your refuse loaders, all those who you directly employ, that rate. But there's no clause in the service level agreement for the commissioning of the service, which I think you could put into the ID Verdi contract and say this is a condition of the contract. But if you're going to provide this service to us, which we commission out, that you pay at least the lowest rate which we pay our staff, which is what we're asking for in this instant.
I hear you, Sam. You were very clear. That's very useful. I mean, you've just been too successful in your past pay bargaining, Sam. So you've created a challenge for us, Sam, by being so successful in your discussions with us as a council.
It was collectively negotiated.
Yes, I know. I've been there before. Look, so all I can do is reaffirm the point that our position is as described, and we'll have that conversation. We're not going to make a concession, Sam, here, are we? We have to have a look at the cost. We've got a first view on it. We have to have a conversation with the employer, and then we have to sort of say, we have to work out if and when we can get that resolved, who is responsible for that resolution. So, but we absolutely do hear you loud and clear. I want to thank you all. You're welcome to stay as long as you like for the rest of the session. You may have better things to do with your life. Yes, I can understand that, but thank you very much for coming. Item 6, decisions reviewed by the scrutiny panel.
There are none, Chair.
Okay, in which case we go on to the main agenda. Item 7.1, which is the end of year update, and we'll take a report from officers. And Pam, I believe you're going to talk to this as Chief Exec for us.
I am. Thank you, Leader, and good evening, everyone. So the concept of an end of year report is new to us this year, but subject to the views of others, I'm quite keen to keep it because I think it has a very useful role as we come to the end of the municipal year and we're preparing for the beginning of a new one. Because I think it does two things. First of all, it reflects some of the achievements that have been made over the course of the last year in relation to the council's priorities, which have been very well articulated in a strategic plan, which is shortly to come to an end. I also think it gives us the opportunity to look ahead to the next municipal year to ensure that any new administration that may be formed is cited on the priorities and the challenges ahead. And this will enable a smooth transition. So I'm quite keen to see this going forward. And I think it also gives us an opportunity in April to make sure that the business of the council continues whilst we're going through the pre-election period. So what you have available to you is two things. First of all, the report, which we've had the chance to peruse. And second, I'm going to make available to you a rather lengthy report. And I don't make any apology for the length of it because it gives you the detail, which I know many of you will need in order to satisfy yourself that you're clear about what has been achieved and what the challenges are ahead. However, for the sake of brevity, because I've been told I have to be 15 and 20 minutes, I thought it might be sensible for me this evening to simply pick out some of the key highlights, areas that I think are particularly important as we recover from the pandemic and contemplate a world where, quite frankly, absolutely everything is different. particularly for our residents in the way that they live, the way they work, the way they spend their leisure time, the way they shop. So a very significant period of change that we're going through and more change ahead. I think it's also worth noting that we're increasingly challenged as a public sector. We've seen that a little bit this evening in terms of how we navigate what's going to be for us a very, very different future ahead. So what I'd like to do, bearing in mind you will get full details of the 30+ presentation that I've prepared for you, that will be available and also on the website. What I'd like to do is to pick out some of the highlights around finance, some of the challenges we've faced in developing a balanced budget, some of the challenges ahead, to talk about some of the high-level achievements we've made against the strategic plan, and great that we now have a fully adopted strategic plan ready to go for 23-26. It would be remiss of me not to talk about the award of city status briefly and the huge investment in city regeneration and renewal that has come with that. I think I'd also like to make some reference to the future of our 2 subsidiary companies and some of the challenge that we've invited in to look at the way we run the council and how we run our subsidiary companies. And finally, I'd like to focus on the changes that we've already made and those that are to come in terms of our senior leadership arrangements. And that's really critical as we move into a new municipal year, because I need to be confident as Chief Exec that we have the right senior leadership capacity in place to confront and resolve some of the challenges ahead. So please bear with me while I pick out some of the highlights. Now, for any of you who participated in some of the budget setting sessions and some of the opportunities that the leader has created for engagement around the budget, you'll know it's been a very, very difficult process. And it's against that backdrop that I think it's quite an achievement to be able to account for some of the strategic plan progress that we've made. Many have said, and I would certainly agree, that the financial conditions that we've faced in recent years and those ahead of us have been some of the most difficult that any one of us can remember. So I think it's really quite important that the incoming cabinet in May has a clear view of the challenges ahead. So yes, as we're required to do by law, a balanced budget has been achieved, but it's come at a heavy price in the sense that this year we must find £5 million worth of savings. And that's in addition to reducing our reserves by almost 2 million, 1.6, 1.7 million. That situation can't continue going forward. We need to find a sustainable and manageable solution to our revenue challenges over the next 3 years. We'll be aware of where some of the challenges lie and where the cost pressures lie around neighbourhood services, some of the inflationary pressures faced by our sport and leisure services, less planning income because our communities, I guess, face uncertainty about their own personal futures, and some pressures on our very valuable corporate buildings, one of which we're sitting in today. So the overall budget gap of 6.95 million is a really significant part of our overall controllable budget, more than a quarter. So I don't think any of us can be under any illusion as to the extent of the challenge we face going forward. We also need to think about our capital programme. One of the recommendations that was made by our LGA peer challenge team that came in to look at the way the council is run and opportunities for improvement in the future, talked about the need to get a grip on our capital programme. And we have done that with real gusto. And I now think we have a much clearer understanding. There's more to learn, great deal more to learn, and certainly a lot more to do. But we have a much firmer grip on our capital programme as we go forward, and what implications that might have for our revenue budget too. So where does that all sit in relation to the strategic plan, which we set in 2020 to expire in 2023? The priorities for the city and for the council were clearly set out in that plan, and there has been significant delivery against some of those key strategic aims against that financial environment that I've already referred to. I'm just going to pick out some of the highlights. So certainly delivering homes for people who need them. I can't think of a more important time to be talking about housing than now. with the huge pressures on our house supply and some of the new challenges that some of our new populations are now bringing to Colchester. But we continued to build new market homes, no more than we needed, but we're certainly very close to achieving our target. Affordable homes, the delivery of 172 is a laudable achievement in the environment we're working in. And work is well underway to build a £65 million leisure park at the Northern Gateway. So as far as delivering homes for people who need them, we have made some progress. However, much more needs to be achieved. And that's in the context of this administration's priority for a cleaner environment, sustainability and the environment being key priorities. Another real area of challenge that we've had to face in the last year or so is the cost of living crisis. And I know that many of you are proud of the work that I am, that our team has done in partnership with others. And I think that's critical. None of this can be achieved on our own. So with some of our voluntary sector partners, with the NHS and with others, we have done a huge amount to support those in our community who are the most vulnerable in the time of cost of living. And thousands of volunteers have engaged in supporting us and other partners in making sure that those that need the help receive the help. I'd also like to mention the work that we've done with the police and the wider One Colchester partnership. And there's a true engagement and strategic way of working collaboratively that I think is something to be proud of too. And whilst I'm on the subject of things to really shout about, it's our role as a city of sanctuary. Only today I met the ex-Home Secretary who commented on the reputation that Colchester has as a place of sanctuary for those that need that safe space and that security. And we have supported refugees and continue to do that as they face the challenge now of bridging hotels being closed in the very short-term future, and working very, very closely with CBH to make sure that the very limited opportunities we have are exploited to make sure that any accommodation that can be provided will be provided. Very close working relationships with the Home Office, and I know our case will be made tomorrow directly to Home Office ministers. Also making a lot of progress on growing a fairer economy so everyone benefits, another of our priorities. The delivery of the Town Deal project, plus of course the great investment brought in by Levelling Up. Over £40 million worth of investment in the city centre designed to tackle inequality, regenerate areas such as St Botolph and the local economy. And I think it's really important to mention the strength of the Essex County Council partnership, a real team effort, Team Colchester, working collaboratively to bring what's best to Colchester. So the time has come now to set ourselves a new strategic vision, strategic plan 2023-26, which sets out some new priorities, which I'm not going to take your time going through now. Some very similar aspirations, but the difference is those aspirations are now set in a post-pandemic environment where we're still recovering and where our financial circumstances are very, very significantly reduced. I've made reference to the LGA Peer Challenge, which we welcomed back in the autumn of last year, and a number of recommendations have been made, all of which have been actioned in one way or another, and progress is being made. And I'll come back in a moment just to talk about the impacts on some of our subsidiary companies. Many of in this room will be very familiar with what I think is a very impressive year of celebration, which of course has already commenced with the visit of His Majesty the King, and lots more to come. Again, details in my presentation, which I will share with you. I've mentioned very briefly city regeneration and renewal, and the place is going to be buzzing, I think it's fair to say, with lots of opportunities to see change across the public realm. I think for many of us in this room who are residents of Colchester, there'll be some convenience, there'll be some cranes, as Lindsay keeps reminding me, and we have to be very used to them on our landscape or in our landscape, but the outcome is bright. The future of Colchester is bright, despite these, what I hope are short to medium term challenges around our budget. And I do have to give credit to the team that have put such credible bids into Department for Levelling Up and have succeeded. Very well done to them. And the master plan that's certainly being developed around the city is moving very fast, and that will be a subject of many future briefings to all of you to make sure you're keeping up to date, as we're doing with our partners and our ambassadors who are very willing to speak up for Colchester, making sure they know what investment is coming into Colchester and how that will benefit the community served, including, of course, our businesses. I said I'd come back to talk very briefly about the subsidiary companies. I think it's fair to say that when I first became chief executive, which was just over a year ago, I had some concerns about the readiness of our subsidiary companies, particularly CCHL, the Amphora group of companies, to ready themselves for the future. And one of the reasons we sought external challenge from the LGA was to get that independent view. And unfortunately, despite incredible achievements by Amphora, some risks have been identified. And as a result of that, we now have an improvement plan emerging, which has the oversight of our leader and his colleagues. In recent weeks, we've appointed a new interim MD, Richard Carr, on the departure of the previous MD. And I'm confident in sharing with all of you that all of the issues that we have identified can be resolved. It will take hard work and focus, but they can be resolved. In terms of CBH, I'm also pleased to note, Colchester Borough Homes, I should say, I'm also pleased to note an excellent working relationship between our arm's length management organisation and the council, and a shared determination to drive improvement across our housing stock and improve joint working with the council. So an awful lot going on. Where I'd like to really conclude my presentation is on a couple of minutes of your time, just talking about how ready is the organisation to respond to some of these challenges. Now, some of you will know that phase one of a two-phase programme of improving and sustaining our senior leadership capacity is now complete. So last December, the new senior leadership board came into place and have been operating for a number of months. That leadership board is smaller than the previous arrangements, and we were able to generate just over £200,000 worth of savings, working in a very different way to improve our strategic capacity to lead the council and support the administration. Phase two is almost complete. Phase two is an attempt, and it's a long-held view of mine, that we need to secure and nurture and protect and value all the strategic leadership capacity we have in this organisation, and we have an awful lot. Phase two is an attempt to make sure that those managers who are currently operating at group manager level, our GMTs, are regarded as our leaders, as part of an extended senior leadership team, because that's entirely what they do. They lead very often large teams doing difficult jobs. We're currently evaluating their roles with a view to bringing them into the heart of the leadership team of the council. And you won't be surprised to hear that we're doing that in a way that reflects the priorities going forward of the strategic plan. So there's quite a lot of detail in the presentation about how the roles will pan out. We're currently in consultation with our wider team, the senior leadership team. None of those jobs are at risk, and together we have co-designed and collaborated on an arrangement that we have confidence can work. But just to give you a flavour of how times have changed, we'll be working in a cluster arrangement whereby we try and break down some of those silos that inevitably develop in large organisations such as this. And we'll be clustering that senior leadership capacity around some of our priorities: housing and the well-being of our community, the place and the prosperity of the residents that live and work in Colchester, the need to recognise that the services of the future for a modern city will look very, very different than they currently do, reflecting the reduced financial circumstances and the need for our residents to take on more responsibilities themselves to keep their communities, for example, clean and tidy. The need to continually transform the business this is not a one-off change, but a process of change that will ultimately end up in transforming the authority to be fit for the local government family of the future, making sure that we use all the insight and research that we can get. And strengthening, and I'm very proud to say we've made some progress on this, strengthening our corporate services, which admittedly over the last 10 years have suffered as a result of reductions in our budgets. And it's always been seen as perhaps the place to make cuts. No longer, in my view. We need to reinvest in corporate services as the core of the organisation to unlock the potential elsewhere. And just to illustrate what I mean by that, our HR teams, our legal teams, our governance teams, our finance and IT, all those core resources which have become rather diluted in recent years. And finally, to end on a positive note, enjoying Colchester, because many people do. So here we're talking about our museum service, our renowned museum service, sport and leisure, etc. So we're going to cluster our team of new heads of service into that type of arrangement. So I'll conclude there with a very final comment about the need to maintain perspective, because the financial picture is bleak. There is no doubt about that. There's no reason to be anything other than very, very honest about the very challenging nature of the financial position that we face. We have a grip on it, and we will find a solution, and we will develop a 3-year plan that supports the strategic plan, but recognises that we have less money. That will mean some really difficult, tough decisions ahead. And I certainly hope I have your support for making those. However, and I come back to something I said earlier, ahead of us, there is a really bright future for Colchester. You've only got to have a look at what's happening in the city centre and the really important work that's involved in making sure not just people who live in the city or on the outskirts of Colchester, but the whole of Colchester in our rural communities benefiting from that growth and the evening out of those inequalities that we know is a challenge for Colchester. And that will all mean a massive improvement for the communities we serve. So a difficult few years ahead, but a bright future to look forward to. And I hope I've done that in a reasonable time, Leader.
Thank you very much, Pam, as our Chief Exec. I just have opportunity for us, and we'll say it perhaps later, to thank you. Thank your senior team, including clearly here tonight, Lindsay Barker and Richard Block, and all those away from this place, including the Democratic Services team who support us every time we take their evenings up, which is quite often, for one reason or another. Mostly good, I hasten to say. But thank you very much for that rich summary, because you've added to what the paper does describe, and you're drawn out of it very helpfully. How you see the future, and that balance, I think, in different ways, we should try to reflect between this. So I'm going to go round the table, if it's all right, and I saw a couple indicate, just to sort of draw out how the recommended decision is to consider the progress made, areas of work, and proposed next steps, and identifying further action, a smooth transition. This is really meaningful. I'm looking at the leader opposition down the far end. You know, this is our collective council. It's our collective duty to deliver this, to deliver as well as we can for the residents of Colchester in difficult times. And in that spirit of being frank about challenge, and I'd welcome views from colleagues about those next steps and how the year feels at its close, or anything you want to lay a particular emphasis on. So go to my right.
Thank you very much, Leader. I think Pam's set out well just what a challenging year has been, and that there will be challenging years ahead post-pandemic, with the economic shocks that we've seen, and with the level of inflation that is hitting households, businesses, and how the council delivers services too. But I think the end of year report is a well-rounded one, because I think it sets out some really great achievements this year, having delivered a budget and a new plan to deliver those modern services for Colchester, and really transforming how the council delivers to residents and businesses. And I think focusing really on what matters to residents. And I think the engagement work that we've done this year, consulting with residents, has really helped to us to inform that. And so much of that has been about focusing on the city centre as well, and how we revitalise the city centre. And that, combined with gaining city status and having a year of celebration to really show Colchester off to people, it's a great opportunity. And we wouldn't have been able to do it without the funding that we've secured, the Levelling Up Fund bid added onto the town deal. And that's just the start of £40 million worth of investment in Colchester. And hopefully that unlocks a massive amount of further investment too. And hopefully, as we consult on that new master plan for the city centre that goes out, we'll start to see changes and improvements on the ground as well. So people see that it's not just a document to sit on a shelf, but it is something that will see the city come to life as well. I would also focus in on the new economic strategy. It really builds on what Colchester has to offer. We've got so much here: world-class university, digital connectivity, arts and culture. And that new economic strategy seeks to address the issues in the local economy head on, including supporting some of our key sectors and raising local wages, as was raised at the start of the meeting tonight too. I don't want to go on much longer, but I think I'd reiterate what Pam has said. Colchester has a bright future. I will not be sat around this table in the years ahead, but I wish you all the best of luck with it.
Thank you, and I was going to do it later, but I'd like to acknowledge now, as Deputy Leader, the role you played has been central in helping us collectively navigate some really difficult things. Budget and the changes that went with it, just the least of the challenges we collectively have done. So my thanks to all the Cabinet, but Adam, to you, if I may, in particular. We all wish you well in your next steps in your personal and professional life. And never say never, and you may be back before you know it. Mark.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Adam. I agree with many of the points you made, and thank you, Pam, for that really helpful analysis of the year and what has gone before to get us to this point. So I do very much recommend we continue with an end of year report. I think that is a good idea, no matter who's in administration. It also could help with transition into the next year administratively as well. So thank you for that. It was really helpful. And it's good to look back on what we have achieved. As I say, it's sort of short term in this 1 year, but also over the last decade or so, going through the complexities that we have faced from austerity, Brexit and COVID and recent inflation and other economic turmoil. So I think through all of those problematic times, we've kept our ambition. We've always been an ambitious place. We've always been somewhere a bit different as well, different to, say, other cities within Essex. We have that fantastic history and culture to look back to and to celebrate. And we've done that across the chamber. And I think with the city status as well, and Darius is here having had a full role in that. I still remain in the middle on that one, coming from outside of the so-called city and believing in the beautiful borough that we do have. But I absolutely understand the positives that come with being a city and the economic sort of powerhouse that we are in Essex. I do still think that the economic stability, I will say, is blamed at sort of some of the government changes that have really hurt us badly, whether that is through sort of cuts to our funding or the sheer sort of mess of inflation. But I would say locally, the challenge from our opposition Conservatives has been positive on governance and audit and scrutiny, which again, this year has been really important. We need that. We need patience at times when we're working with the auditors and the problems we have. But actually, the challenge is good, and I always want that to continue. So to the opposition members as well, I think together we achieve more, and we have when we've collected across the council chamber. And I think across parties in Colchester, we understand the need for transformation, and we approach it with open-mindedness, working jointly with partners in the city and borough. For example, Pam and I very much understand the NHS in working together with those partners and beyond. So and Team Essex, I do think we are working better with county. There's still things I would absolutely criticise, but David, I think your role as leader has been integral to that as well. And celebrating all those successes from levelling up and the town deal and the other city improvements that we will need Essex on board with. So I also believe it's a positive future. We must continue to work together and embrace the opportunities that we are offered, and bring the public with us through consultation and through celebration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That's equally very well said, particularly the latter point, I think, about taking people with us. As the deputy leader and I know from a conversation in a street not so far away from here, you know, we can do this well or less well, but it's always a challenge, and the recovering ground is always going to be more difficult than preparing it well beforehand. So no, that's very well said. And in terms of the changes that are coming, you will say, you will know it's worth saying that we're going to have a longer and extended period of consultation around master planning and changes for the city centre. And of course, that in turn will spur more of the same. So yeah, some lessons always can be learned, can't they? But you're absolutely right. Thank you very much indeed. Can I go to Councillor Judy Young?
Yes, thanks very much, Leader. I think Pam has eloquently set out the achievements over the last year. And I think, you know, if we look at housing in particular, we're doing really well in terms of delivering on our aspirations that we set out in January 19 to deliver 350 new council homes before the end of 2024. And we're making good progress in reaching that target. That isn't to say that we pat ourselves on the back and can sit back and say job well done, because we know there's an avalanche coming our way in terms of the need for housing. And I just wanted to share, and I know there's plans to make this more shared widely with other councillors. We have 285 people in households in temporary accommodation at the moment, which isn't great, and we are working as hard as we can to deliver new housing to provide homes for those people. So it's not any complacency, I think, that we look at this end of term report, Leader. It is a mark of a job well done, but there is more to do. And I mean, we talked about partnership working, and I don't think this is in the report, but one of the things I think is really going to be very exciting, certainly for my ward, is the community supermarket, which is the shared prosperity bid that we jointly fielded with Essex County Council. Dewick has a community supermarket, as does Basildon, and I know Cambia due to get one too. So that alone, when we're talking about meeting the needs of people in poverty and those facing the most difficult times with the economic crisis they find themselves in, is something that we can look to the future. And, you know, as Pam said, we have a bright future ahead in terms of what we can do to better support the people that most need our support. I'll leave it there, Leader. I just think, you know, we need to acknowledge what has been done well. And I thank the officers that I've worked with over the past year. They've been tremendous support to me in my role with housing and communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Judy. Again, very well said on that. And the immediacy of homes and homelessness, you just can't overstate this. So every bit of progress we make really matters. We may get to that subject later, won't we? Pam.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Pam, for the summary. It's feeling quite emotional actually when I'm listening to it, because it's good to hear that kind of thing. It's been a very, very busy year, and certainly my first year in the cabinet, and it's been a huge learning experience, and I think a real privilege to work with everyone in this room, including down the end. It's been very instructive and really exciting and super challenging. I mean, with who imagined a budget like that, you know, 2-3 years ago. And the fact that we've made such progress on things like housing, on cost of living, on fairer economy, on regeneration, on service restructuring and developing modern services in this time, I think is is I think to be remarked. And as Judy says, we don't sit on our laurels. We know there's way more to do. I love the idea of a community supermarket, but I wish we didn't need one, you know, and I wish we had an economy that meant we didn't need such things. In terms of my area, heritage and culture, the city status has been a huge boost to that. And here I would pay tribute again to Darius at the end of the room, who did so much to pull that bid together. But then it was also a challenge, because pulling together a year of celebration in Straighten times was a challenge. But I think we've managed to do that really well, and it's still a programme that's still evolving. Events are still being added to it, which has got that nice organic community feel to it. And for me, the challenge ahead is to begin to align the legacy work around city status, the work around regeneration and renewal, the work around the cultural strategy, the work around the SPF and the LUF, the Levelling Up Fund, Shared Prosperity Fund. So all these smaller wheels needing to pull together now in one direction, which I think they will do. So I agree that it's a very exciting time for Colchester and has a great future ahead. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Pam, and thank you for all you've done on bringing in your own personal professional. You had the right place to inject something extra into this. And again, I thank you for making it plain that we build on the work of colleagues like Darius and others, because only in that way do we show one of the brief points I'll make is that political maturity that was remarked upon by the LGA. Now, we may walk away from that on occasion, but remembering that for us to make our biggest impact, we have to do this with others. We have to do it cross-party. We have to do it in particular with the county council, and we have to acknowledge differences with the government of the day, but we have to work with the government of the day as well. That's one of our strengths this last year. I'll finish with just a couple of remarks, which is a reminder of what was said to us by the LGA, which said, we're on the cusp of something great, and we are. We are going to see transformational change in the place we live in. We have every reason to think that will show itself in economic benefit, in vibrancy, in footfall, and therefore in terms of quality of life ultimately for the residents we're here to serve. And if we do this well, we'll take a rich view of what counts as the city and the district, and we'll ensure that we don't just look at the centre and the heart, we look more widely. But that will need us to keep our focus on the bottom line. It will need us to deliver what we set out to do, and to ensure we have the financial stability to ensure we can actually follow through and deliver. So I think we end the year sober about what lies ahead, but an extraordinary amount has been done in an extraordinarily challenging year, and we're as well set to hand on to the next administration, where this council can play a leading role with others and affecting the lives of people around us, as well as the place in which we live. So I will close at that. The recommendations are as described in paragraph 2, and can ask for your agreement. Thank you very much. The next item is 7.2, town deal progress and scrutiny panel notes from the 15th of March. Councillor Willits, Dennis, did you want to come to and join us? You might as well stay there, Dennis, pull up a pew, as they say.
Never miss the opportunity, leader. And I know what it's like to have a meeting with Putin now. I can just about see you on the horizon, leader. But I hope that relationships are more cordial than that particular person. The town deal has been before the scrutiny panel on several occasions, because it was the first of the big ticket handouts to the borough, and there was concern, and I think there will be continuing concern that we are shunted into giving these projects to a completely separate body to decide. We remain the accountable authority financially, but one does ask the question, are these functions which the councillors should deciding rather than groups of worthies. Now, the groups of worthies bring in lots of extra talent, extra experience, which perhaps the councillors haven't got. But there is this latent worry, we are the elected body to deal with the town, and perhaps we should be dealing more positively if there was an opportunity with the management of these projects. And if anything, that was one of the reasons why I was keen to ensure that the scrutiny panel looked at these projects and the way they were working and the relationships between us as the accountable body and the group that were dealing with the definition of the projects to make sure we were getting the best we could out of this deal. So that is the reason why scrutiny panel looked at, or one of the reasons why the scrutiny panel looked at this this collection of projects on several occasions, although we've decided now that it's on such an even keel, whoever's running scrutiny next year, that perhaps it only needs to be looked at annually rather than every 3 months or every 6 months. But just looking to the report from the notes of the meeting, which are fairly clear, so and doesn't need to too much time on them. Our main concern were the timescales and whether all these projects could be kept on track for delivery by 2026, particularly with the challenges of the capital programme, which of course you, Leader, and your colleagues were dealing with in other contexts, but I mean they were present in spades when it comes to the town deal projects. And the difficulties of some of the land acquisitions or land deals which were necessary for some of those projects to move forward. And throughout, when we have scrutinised these projects, we've had very firm assurances from our officers that all these issues are manageable and these projects will be delivered by 2026. And the panel was very appreciative of the time and effort that was put in to ensure that we fully understood the projects and we were able to support the view that these projects being well managed and would be delivered. There were one or two, what one might call overhanging questions, which have sort of come through in our scrutiny of the town deal. And one of the main ones is whether the non-monetary benefits of these projects is assured to be achieved. And if I can exemplify that, particularly with the Heart of Grinstead project, where we see a sort of basic element of £4 million from the town deal being leveraged up to some £41 million in total value, an extraordinary input into one ward in the borough. And when one looks at the targets which that particular town deal project has, to ensure that the inequalities are tackled effectively, improvements in the wider social and economic experience, and that there should be focus on the particular classes of deprivation, the family, the elderly, and those with poor mental health. They are tough challenges to deliver on. And I think one of the questions which we've had throughout our scrutiny of the project, whether in projects like this, whether we will actually be seeing and being able to measure a reduction in deprivation, or whether all the project is doing is sort of plastering over and making it more tolerable to live, but with continued multiple deprivations that we see in certain areas. We hope that we are striving towards the former, but the way the projects are being launched and managed, there is no certainty to me and to other members of the panel that at the end of these projects, which may be many years off, we are definitely going to see a reduction in the multiple deprivation, because that is what this expenditure is about. And that is an overhanging question which it comes through. And I certainly would like reassurance at cabinet level that we are looking to actually reduce the deprivation, not just make life more tolerable under it. The other question we had, and which has a recommendation on the paper before you, is on the town centre projects, because many of the town deal projects are concerned with the town centre. The panel felt that the council, and particularly the cabinet and those involved in these projects, have a very clear understanding what the benefits and the awarenesses are of these projects. But as soon as you move away from the centre of power into the general community, there is a very hazy understanding of what is going on, and in particular, what are the long-term benefits. And the panel felt that the significant area which was missing was better PR and better presentation of the significant benefits which this group of projects are going to bring to the town centre, whether you live in the town centre or whether you just come in from time to time to enjoy the Roman history or the food or the clubs. It is not well known, and we felt that the council is not telling the story sufficiently loudly and sufficiently well about what benefit these projects have. And we are recommending that there should be some concerted thought on how we put over better what is the overall package and how it's going to benefit everyone. And that, if anything, is the most important recommendation I think the panel is making to Cabinet. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. If I'll pick up the general set of issues, and then I'll go to Julie. I think would like to talk perhaps more specifically about investment in Greenstead and how it's being overseen, and indeed how it's being framed and tracked. So first of all, thank you very much to you personally and to the committee for the work you do. Back to the remarks Councillor Corey earlier, we know that challenge and debate of the right kind really adds a value. So thank you to you personally and to those you work with, and thank you for coming again tonight. It is a choice, and walking us through the way that the panel saw this. We understand this. We understand there's a long journey to go, incidentally, and the significant pressures, as mentioned by other inflation in the context of supply chain and delivery. But we've got a good team, good people on this. We'll do as well as any will in this circumstance, and we will track that, do our best to deliver to the aspirations that have been set, which are wider than just change of place. It's about what that change of place might make. And we absolutely do get the need to be transparent about that. We will be, and we'll fit it with the capital programme. We're much closer to be able to share some of what that might mean. And we'll do that as soon as we can. That will go through governance and audit with that conversation as well. So I think the last point for me would be, beyond that, welcome for the contribution to how we look at this will be just to sort of say the point about narrative and communication is completely understood. There's quite a lot of work going on this now. We're investing some time and effort, some senior comms, to try and make sure that we can draw out the whole picture. So there's no point doing it unless it's understood. There is an attraction point much wider than us here about how the city is seen in all its vibrancy, frankly, seen at its best as it changes. And that's work on that. We'll be happy to go and share that. But you will see better comms with every respect for our current better comms on this, more a narrative and a connection between the different pieces of work, the projects that make up the programs, and how they come together and how they'll fit with master planning. I'll stop there and go to Julie.
Thanks very much, Leader. I think, in terms of health of the Greenstead, well, I'm struggling here to even think what it's called. That's not a good start. The Heart of Greenstead project. You rightly pointed out, I think, in the scrutiny meeting, it would be easier to move forward with this if we had ownership of the whole site, which we don't. And those negotiations, continue to acquire that whole site so we can actually build that out in the way we want to do so. But I think, you talked about the great and the good being involved in decision making, and shouldn't it sit with councillors. I mean, for the Heart of Greenstead project, there's been a lot of emphasis put on involving the community, and that has been quite a piece of work. And I think Community 360, since they've been involved in that community liaison work, they have made some significant progress in developing that partnership, because you know, people need to feel comfortable about what the proposals are going to look like. And since that work has been done, I think the first thing we will see in Greenstead is the community hub, which will bring together a lot of services for Greenstead residents that they absolutely need, which is better healthcare, mental health support, like you mentioned, food provision, you know, skills and education opportunities, and employment prospects for people in Greenstead. Because I think at the heart of this town deal, it was about economic prosperity, if I remember, in the way it was set out. What I will pick you up on, I think, is the need to actually tackle deprivation. And I think I've been here since 1998, and inequality has been a driving force in my political life. But what I will say to you is 88% of those people that are in housing rent arrears are on universal credit. So although we can do what we can in terms of deliver projects like the Heart of Greenstead, actually people need more money in their pockets to be able to live in today's you know, economic crisis that we have, and they don't have enough money to live. And it's as simple as that, and that is about government policy. So anything you can do to get that message across, I would invite you to do so. But certainly my residents in Greenstead are poorer today than they were in 2010, I have to say that, Leader.
Thank you very much, Julia and Pam.
Just briefly, and thank you, Councillor Winnett, for the comments and for work with scrutiny and others. I do think Julie's right that reducing inequality will probably take more than the town deal funding to deliver, as you expect, and because the scale of the inequalities that we face are immense, and they have widened over the last 10 years. And by any measure, gaps between the lowest paid and the highest paid, gaps within health outcomes, gaps in living standards, gaps in life expectancy, they're all going in the wrong direction. And you look at, there's so many reports will bear that out. So I think, yeah, it will take more than town deal funding. And I'd say take a change of government, but that's another matter.
That subject to one side. Thank you very much again, Dennis. You might all stay if that's okay, because we'll move on to the next item. So we've had the resolution, we've had the chair of the panel's remarks, and we've had a response. The recommendations are set out, and they address understanding about the projects and their benefits, and that's accepted. Do we agree? Agree. Thank you very much indeed. Next item is the city status update. And Dennis, again, we go to you. We've got an extract from the draft minutes, and we have, I'm sure, in the interest of all of us in all of this, and we've got 3 recommendations around the whole city approach to be taken about skills, which came out specifically as something which we might wish to focus, and great emphasis on practicality. I think there we may have had a slight difference, because we are going at the rate of pace we're at, but I'll leave that to my colleagues first of all. So anybody who would like to pick up on this, if not, I'll just ask you, Dennis, to see if you've got a few more remarks you want to make, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, Leader, there almost seemed to be a sort of a philosophical difference between yourself and the panel on the matter of city status, although it was not a great difference. It may well be how many angels on the head of a pin type of difference, but the panel in the main, and I think that probably the residents of the city believed that there was going to be some real tangible difference when we got city status, and that that we would be able to identify and from management background measure the difference that city status was making, and that city status would enable us to do things we couldn't do before we became a city, and to do things better, bigger and quicker. Now we are a city. And I think that there is this perception that this is what city status is all about. And I'm not quite sure that Cabinet's perception of city status is quite along those lines. The year of celebration was noted by the scrutiny panel that it was well organised, it was comprehensive, fully supported, and it was citywide. So put that issue aside for the moment. But perhaps something which made us think more deeply is your remarks, Leader, to the panel, that there are no extra resources, no wodge of funds, no additional powers, and no duties arising from city status, which again, we ask the question, what are the tangible difference? What are the projects which we're now doing because we're a city, which couldn't have been or were not being done before? What are the projects we can do more efficiently now we're a city? And what acceleration will there be now we're a city in terms of benefits for the community? We had a very interesting presentation, you were there, Leader, from our officers about city status. But when we analysed what was in those presentations, they were all about town deal, levelling up, shared prosperity funds, and the strategic plans. Everything that we were going to do in any case before city status came along. Now, you cautioned us, Leader, that to try and identify what were the specific issues, sort of the stardust that's sprinkled on the projects and makes things work, because we're a city, was not easy, and would probably take resources which could be better spent elsewhere, rather than trying to discern what were the real benefits of city status. And we accepted that point, and the panel was more of the opinion that city status is a branding issue rather than significant differences to the way we will work in the future, because what is being proposed in terms of the old strategic plan, the new strategic plan, they are the same. There have been no changes. So city status should really be presented as a branding issue of all the things that are going to make Colchester good in the future, brought together under the umbrella of a city status project. So our recommendations were, firstly, the year of celebration. It must be all city, and there is still in the rural areas, despite what we keep saying around this table, a concern that city status is all about doing things wonderful in the city centre and not throughout the whole of the issue. The matter of the skills and the improvement in skills was one of the things which the panel thought was perhaps the most important thing that should change now we are a city. We need more skills. Now, we tend to put PR spin on many of the things we're doing, but if you look at the annual monitoring statement, it's quite clear that there is a skills deficiency in Colchester, and that one of the things which makes us an exciting place is the fact that it's a low wage economy, whereas we want to transform into a high wage, high skilled economy. And if anything, city status should be about improving the skills and moving faster towards a high wage economy. So we recommend that Cabinet should perhaps, as part of city status, take on board a real drive to pushing up skills level and using it as a lever to push up the value of the economy. And the third point was that as a city, we would expect all our projects and programs to be delivered in a more effective manner. Perhaps that should be one of the second resolution that we have to bolster city status, that we're going to do things more effectively, quicker, better project management than we've had in the past. So that is a bit of a rat bag of issues coming from the the scrutiny panel. As chairman, I just have to report what it is. Some I agree with, some I think are a little flakier, but that is that was the overall gist of the panel's view.
Thank you very much. I go to Councillor Fox first.
Thank you, Leader. I thought the discussion at scrutiny was really good. Dennis, and thank you for coming along and talking through that, because I think that on one level, at this stage, city status is an intangible benefit, but I think it is a benefit nonetheless. And it's and I feel like I have already seen people start to set their sights higher off of the back of it. And I point to a few things. One of those is the team Colchester approach with the county council. And I think that they very much see Colchester as one of the key places, if not the key place, that they want to spend their time and some of their money in improving the city. I think some of the work with our partners, I would pick out the university in particular, that sees real benefits in terms of it being able to sell Colchester nationally and internationally to students and researchers. And I look to some of the discussions that we've had with people like the Business Improvement District, the Colchester Ambassadors, the We Are Colchester Board, the Overseas Town deal. I think there's a sense of energy in some of those groups that there wasn't prior to city status, because they all see that there is work to be done, but they want to be involved in that work. And then finally, around skills, I think it was a really great conversation, and you're absolutely right to focus in on that. And I won't be here, but I will not be able to not take any interest in what your panel discusses on that in the coming year, whoever might be chairing it, Councillor Willets. But because I think it's really key, and I think the devolution deal potentially gives some real opportunities there. And certainly I feel the work that I've done with some of the other North Essex authorities on the North Essex Economic Board, we are one of the Colchester is one of the driving economies in the county. And if Colchester's not at the table wanting to lead some of that work that goes on as part of devolution, we'll miss out. So I think Colchester needs to be there and needs to be saying we want to be one of those dynamic economies in Essex. We want to be improving skills. We want to be improving wage levels for our residents and supporting businesses too. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Adam. That's said exactly as I would wish to have done. But thank you very much, Dennis, for ensuring that we had that quality of conversation. It's a great challenge. The intangibles, there's no question about it. The energy and the prominence, the reinforcement of position for Colchester has been really helpful, and that's flowing through into the decision, which will have constructive benefits. But you're right to give us the challenge, and I think we need to get back to that subject and keep saying, we've raised our game, point us out with the benefits that are coming. So thank you very much indeed. We have the recommendation. I don't want to argue about the language, but the intent's right. Are we prepared to accept this? Yeah, thank you very much indeed. The next item is the Governance and Audit Committee meeting the 7th of March. Agenda item 9.1, financial monitoring report. We don't have a representative, but the recommendations are really plain. Again, a very useful conversation. Recommended to us that we give consideration to monitoring the progress of specific items on the capital programme, and we've agreed that already. Yes, we'll do that, and we welcome that. We'll fit that into the cycle of wanting cabinet business, but we need this. We'll do it. We look forward to getting this out in the open and then having the same constructive conversations as we had before at scrutiny. And the particular attention we've given to the budget for neighbourhood services. And the reason for that remark, reading the report, remembering the conversation, was very much just the challenge in that area, going through a great deal of change when it's been traditionally very difficult to estimate cost, given the many factors that drive it. So the resolution for us is, as set out in here. Can I just ask, does any member, county council wants to talk to this? If not, Mark, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to say on the capital programme, we've had some initial findings back from Lucy Bredman, who's undertaking that report. So thank you to her working with the finance team. I have been discussing with her, and she reported back to leadership that we will take that to a sort of all member briefing as the first stage, and then on to governance and audit. And it's something that I want to ensure we go into more detail on, and assure governance and audit, for example, who I promised to keep involved, ensure they have the chance to look through that in good time as well. That may happen now after the election, so it may not be my position to completely promise, but that's what was set in train. Thank you.
Thank you. And we consider ourselves bound by that. That will be a recommendation for the next administration, that we take this through to in a transparent way to members and to governance and audit. And so we'll note that accordingly. Any other remarks from any? All right, okay. Then are we agreed? Thank you very much. And that gets us to item 10.1, and we've got Councillor Willets and Councillor Summits wishing to speak. Recommendations after the review of section 106. So if I ask you both gentlemen to come to the table, thank you, and then we'll respond to you as a pair, if that's okay. Thank you.
While Councillor Sonics is readying himself, in terms of background, this was an item which was put on the programme of the scrutiny panel right at the beginning of the civic year, Leader. But there was a lot going on because it was already identified that there were weaknesses in the 106 process procedures. So we didn't push the issue until the very last meeting of the civic year, at which we got reports and discussions. So we're still a bit hazy on just how well the contributions are collected and whether we're getting the best possible deal out of it, and that will be another item of scrutiny. But in terms of our initial foray into this area, we were very pleased that over the course of the year, we've seen Karen Syret producing her ideas on infrastructure database and linking that into the ability to raise 106 contributions, and possibly, as has been mentioned in some recent documents, the re-examination of Son of Still. So strengthening the system whereby developers need to make their proper contribution towards a city which is historically deficient in many aspects of its infrastructure, which has lagged behind the delivery of housing. So we welcomed the news that there was going to be a proper audit and a database of what infrastructure was needed, and that sometime in the future that needs to be linked into the 106 contributions. The scrutiny panel's of the opinion that the 106 arrangements at the moment are a bit of a last-minute approach. The way things are done, the way the projects are identified for any particular community and how they will be ameliorated by the 106 contributions, and the determination of what they should be. It is done, it's done well, but we're certainly of the opinion that it could be done better with a look at the management and the way it goes on. Some of the opportunities are missed. and we've seen failure to gain significant 106 contributions where they would have been very usefully used. And we believe that there is leakage, either the contributions not being agreed in the best possible circumstances at the beginning of a planning application, or not being collected during the course of it. We also had concern that city councillors are not sufficiently well linked into this whole process. It's a sort of magical process which the planning committee carries out, and we think it should be more overt and there should be greater influence into what projects are needed, so that there is a very clear understanding when the planning committee gives planning permission about the infrastructure that is needed in the local area where the plan has been approved. In terms of the recommendations, the first one we have is that we believe that the whole system would work better if there was a sort of middle ranking officer who could spend a lot of time looking at the infrastructure needs and how these are married into the planning applications coming forward. And we know that resources are stretched and strained, but we do recommend that this is an area where there should be a better focus, presumably by all the issues being brought together under one particular person. The second recommendation is that we would suggest, if it can be done in a polite manner, that Essex County Council should be asked to be more agile in the way they identify projects which need to be included in our planning permissions. There are certain issues set out in per capita contributions for education, as there are for health and so on. But we think that when it comes to ensuring that new schools are there, that new roads are there, the County Council needs to overhaul its approach to contributions in the same way as we are, as a City Council, are overhauling our approach. So if it can be done tactfully, Leader, we think that that via your various channels, we should be asking for better cooperation on the way the contributions are assessed and delivered. And the final recommendation is in effect that there should be better marrying together of the information about the 106 contributions that are available and the projects that are delivering them, and perhaps it's management information. Members should have, say, as well as the monthly update on what monies are available, an update on how they are going to be applied to the most priority infrastructure needs in and around the areas where the projects planning applications are being delivered. Unfortunately, it's probably bad news at a time when we have pressure on resources to say this is an area which would work far better if we could find a little extra person power to make it happen. But nevertheless, Scrutiny Panel believes that that is so, that this is an area where we are losing the benefit of contributions because we're not negotiating the best deal and making sure the best deal is collected, probably because we haven't got the people to do it in the numbers that are needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis, and real sympathy with all of that. And you will know some of the steps down here starting to be taken, have been taken. But listen to Councillor Sonex Winnan.
Yes, I endorse everything Dennis has said, and he puts in such lovely, polite language, and I hope I can do the same. Look, it was me who asked for this review. And what I was interested in, there's two bits. There's collecting as much money as we can, and there's spending as much money, or spending it sensibly, rather. And I want this to focus on the collection, because the way I see it from sitting out in rural North, in the wilds of rural North, Colchester is a town that has just grown and grown and grown, and its infrastructure hasn't kept up. So our biggest job as a council is to collect money for that infrastructure and spend it. So I'm focused on particular projects, and the more I looked at them, the more I realized, first of all, that a lot of the infrastructure spending is done by Essex County Council, and we are the collection agent for them. And that the Essex County Council guidance on how much should be collected is poor and getting worse. And I've been working with Karen Sowrett to give a robust response from Colchester to their latest consultation, which has just closed. And we've gone back and we've said, please, please make this a lot clearer, a lot shorter, a lot less waffle about economic benefits and other intangibles. What developers need to know is what contributions they're going to have to make. And it's this dysfunction on the contributions that actually developers don't like. They don't know how much to bid for land because they don't know what Section 106 is they're going to do. They know the game. They play the whole game saying, oh, well, it's not sufficiently connected to the development. And I actually managed to get one developer. They weren't consulted properly. I've managed to get one and other developers, a couple of other developers showing interest in it, to be saying, yeah, we want that extra clarity. So it's really important we try and influence Essex County Council on that road. And we have given a robust response, but we need to back it up. And if they won't do it, I think we should do it ourselves. I think we should try and list down, be much more prescriptive and clear for developers on what it is. It'll benefit everyone, except perhaps some of the professional firms. It'll just make the system better. And I think that's really what I wanted to say. We, at the moment, have a system that is wildly inconsistent between different sites, wildly inconsistent. And I've enumerated some examples of that. And the decision-making process is opaque, to say the least, maybe for good reasons, but there's some sort of development committee between Colchester and Essex County Council that deals with it all. And so I think on the collection side, there's a lot of good work to be done that will make us a better city if we can do it right.
Thank you very much, William, both of you. If I respond on what I understand, if colleagues want to add to that, that'd be welcome. It's very clear set of recommendations with recruiting and strengthening the processes. Karen Sowrett is a first-class award-winning planning officer. She is no soft touch, is she, for those who know her? But we have to have the collective capacity to, and we have to have the right set of approaches with partners and right sort of understanding that we're going to, as rightly put, extract as much as we sensibly can, and then spend it well. The infrastructure failings across the district are much more than Section 106. I think we have to acknowledge that, but they can have a material influence. And it's only in the last year, personal story, I started to become a bit more aware of this, and also the differences between some local authorities, Chelmsford is one we know well, who have done a lot better. So question immediately is, why is that the case? Now, in the changes to the sort of the planning framework, which we all have to work, some things which are possible are less so now, but this is a very helpful start. And my recommendation is very plain to colleagues that we should accept it. And I do take the point also about the relationship with the council. Now, I sort of say this and say it again, it's a rounded relationship with many things in it, and some which is going extraordinarily well. You know, the team Colchester work around master planning, from my perspective, and some colleagues have sight of this, is absolutely where we need to be. Some of the willingness to look at where responsibilities lie between that balance between the county and the city council, that's been looked at in a way that's not been done before. We need to get that same kind of spirit into this, William. So colleagues, is there anything else anybody wants to add beyond the remarks of visiting councillors and my own response? No. Then look, thank you both very much indeed for your work behind the scenes, right? Always welcome, and your work in panel, and we accept recommendations. Thank you. And on the stroke of the hour, we've got to the end of, almost the end of public business. We have petitions, public statements and questions, which look to me to be complete and nothing outstanding, correct? In which case we need to go to the, I'm waiting for the last act and duty of the deputy leader. Will I help him?
Thank you very much, Leader. I move the following motion. That in accordance with section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, and in accordance with the local authorities, executive arrangements, meetings and access to information, England Regulations 2012, the public, including members of the press, be excluded from the meeting for the following items as they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972.